And a big part of that is respecting cultural differences. We could easily legislate that you play the national anthem at the start of every Tough Mudder event globally, or at no Tough Mudder event globally. But I think either of those wouldn't be appropriate, because we need to adjust slightly for the appropriateness of the culture and
no whining,
no quitting,
overcome.
Community, teamwork,
Tough Mudder,
tougher together.
Hey to all my Mudder family, my OCR brothers and sisters, and to you listening right now. You're my people too. We do share a world. And I am your mirror man and host of Tough Mudder's No Excuses podcast, Sean Corvell. In this episode, I am talking with Giles Chater. He is the CEO at Tough Mudder and the Senior Vice President International at Spartan. This is an interview he and I have been trying to make happen for a while. And finally, boom, we pulled it off. And the timing's perfect. It's just after our 2022 World Toughest Mudder race, of which Giles was in attendance. And thanks to him and our TMHQ staff, it was one of our best events in the history of Tough Mudder's 24-hour races. We recap our 2022 WTM experience, highlighting some of the moments we think are special. And we also reflect on this Tough Mudder year and some of the things we look forward to in the future. Now, I've never sat and talked with Giles for more than a few minutes, so this was a treat. Previously, when we've spoken, he always been very polite, reserved, professional, English. In this conversation, it was great. I discovered a very engaging bloke with a wonderful sense of humor and very much committed to the growth and well-being of Tough Mudder and its community. And listen to hear if you can detect a little South African dialect in his accent. Here's my conversation with Giles Chater on No Excuses. Awesome. It's still working. You have no idea how awesome this is for me. I've been trying this and we've actually attempted it. And for some reason, something always happens. So keep my fingers crossed. I'm knocking on wood. I have Giles Chater. Is it Chater, Giles?
Chater.
Chater, of course. It's English. It's more proper, Chater. But when you come in the States, we'll ruin it for you. Chatter. We got Giles Chater here from the Talk a Lot family, and Giles Chater is our.
As long as you
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, as long as you don't throw me into the sea in Boston, then I'll take it.
Not at all, my friend. You're a hero in this country to a lot of us. So just get it right out, Giles is the CEO of Tough Mudder and Spartan, UK and USA, North America, and the man that's making everything run smooth right now. And I got that right, the title. Is that correct, Giles?
Well, more or less. I mean, this is the challenge in this weird world we're in with Spartan. So I do Chief Executive Tough Mudder. I run all of Spartan's operation outside of North America. And, we enjoy taking a moment to poke fun of our American friends, whom we love dearly. And they use the term international to just describe everything that isn't America, just the rest of the world, and they kind of leave that to me.
Yes, international.
But our friend Joe DeSena, who amuses me greatly, and I am quite fond of. He's obviously still group CEO and has fun meddling in all sorts of things.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Joe on the podcast just a few days ago, actually, for the first time. It was very cool. I was like talking to our General Patton. Awesome guy. So I enjoyed that.
He is quite a gentleman.
Yes, he is. Now, again, I'm just so happy we got this going on. And so I'm going to jump right into this, Giles. One, we just had the World Toughest Mudder event. That was like about 2 weeks ago from when we're talking right now. For anybody that is listening and not familiar with the World Toughest Mudder event, it is Tough Mudder's 24-hour competition race, where our contestants, our competitors, and people out there just finding their personal best are out on the course for 24 plus hours. It's a 5-mile loop. They're traversing 20 some odd obstacles and weather and terrain and one rattlesnake. And everybody did well and was able to, I think everybody was happy because it felt like a great event from me. And Giles, when I saw you towards the end, and we'll go back, but towards the end, dude, may I say you looked with glee.
Indeed, we had a wonderful time. It's just a moment to connect with a lot of the community over a longer period of time in a more emotional moment. It's also, it almost it brings kind of a natural conclusion to the end of a lot of what the team had been working for. So yes, we had a wonderful time. We challenged some people, which was great. We were inspired by some people, which was great. We stayed up a little bit too late and got a bit crazy, which was great. That's just a wonderful, wonderful event.
Yeah, and we did have people from all over the world. We've had in the previous World Toughest Mudder events, but and in fact, I feel like some of the people I've seen at the previous World Toughest Mudder events have become, they're family now too. They're part of that Mudder community. I like this. It makes it more legit. World Toughest Mudder, especially with you being involved too internationally.
And so interesting. Follow up from that. Actually, I was dropped a note by a president of a national federation just yesterday, and he's like, "Oh, how do we qualify a team?" And so we have, a couple of groups in South America, a couple of groups in the Philippines who watched the live stream, and they're like, "Oh, we really want to be part of this," which is great. We look forward to welcoming them. One of the one of the things that I reflected on the most this year, actually. We obviously had Chris and Jen, Silent Jen, so primarily Chris, do a couple of the race briefings. And what I really wanted is to bring a couple of the team forward to allow their personalities to come out, to allow them to, just take a bit of credit for the work that they do and become faces in the community as well. And so I was watching as Chris delivered the race briefing, and we obviously had a couple people from the cancelled Spartan Ultra kind of champs that were there. And I found myself thinking, I wonder what they are thinking right now as slides with alligators come up and Chris is talking about some pretty wild penalties. And so the same thing happens as we get some people in from the Philippines. They're new to Tough Mudder. They're coming in, they're proper hyped up, and they sit there and they meet this community for the first time. I do wonder what's going to go through their minds. But I do know 24 hours or 36 hours on, they will be so pleased that they got involved and will be welcomed into a special, special group.
Yeah, bravo to Chris and Jen. They did a great job this year with our World Toughest Mudder event. One of the best since we've been doing it. And I too, I feel like you do. I've had the privilege and honor of being MC working with Tough Mudder since 2011. And I kind of get the icing on the cake because I become the mouthpiece and the connection, the face, to what people can connect to right away with the experience that they're having. I'm driving this great car if I'm going to relate it to racing. I'm just the driver here, then so I get all the credit when the car and the people behind the scenes, the people that are putting these events together are just doing an amazing job. And I always love when they do get to connect with the runners, with our with everybody actually. So yeah, when you say that, I'm like, yeah, I like to promote that every chance I get. You know me, I'll throw the mic in anybody's face. So I'm glad you say that and that you see that that's important also.
I am, you're happy to throw the mic at anybody, which is great. I also had a chuckle. Sometimes we have to throw the mic at you. I recall just before World's Toughest started, we were there at the start line. We did some maths, clearly badly, and we worked out, all the timing for everybody. We got up, we set our bits, we're all done, and we're 10 minutes early. This is really awkward. What we're going to do? And we're like, it's all right. We got Sean on the mic. In you go. You have to jump off the stage.
Okay.
Bring a bit of energy.
I will take the total. I will take the total blame for that, and not just being like meek or being nice or anything. No, that was because Chris and I, we talked about that whole timing of the thing, and of course, I've been doing this all my life. It's never going to come out like you totally plan it. But also there were other things that came up, in the last minute that I needed to fit in. So I think it worked out great. It felt good. I mean, you were awesome on the mic, sir. Thank you.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind. One of the, everybody, we talk about fears and overcoming your fears at Tough Mudder. I'm quite fond of heights. I'm quite fond of slides. Quite fond of cold water. Not at all fond of public speaking. It might be my least favorite thing to do in the world. So it's obviously a byproduct of the role I have. So I spent way too long holding a mic, both at the start and at the brunch. But one's got to challenge it. Apparently, it makes us better.
Yeah, you did great, man. And I don't know if it's culture or if it's you. You do seem like somebody that isn't looking to, again, show off like, we do here. Willing to stand back and do the work, do the groundwork, and let others go up front and do all the hyper stuff, like I get to do. So it was amazing that you're there. And like you said, public speaking, I believe, just passed death as the number one fear in the world. So well done once again on that.
Thank you. I mean, there's a fact that boggles the mind. I'm not sure that's how I would rank them, but I certainly understand why people feel that way.
I'm serious. Google it. I think it did. I think it really did. I'm not just making that up. In fact, we ought to have public speaking as one of the obstacles on the course. Let's go to World Toughest Mudder. Let's go to the whole beginning of it, because again, I thought this was an awesome year. We did a great job with it. What were your highlights for the event for you?
I mean, there were a number of highlights. I think for me, one was the team, and actually, Brendan was reflecting on this afterwards as well. We had to rebuild the team this year. Brendan, who we brought up afterwards to recognise longest-serving team employee, he basically started this year with no team. Had to build them all from scratch, and we had a pretty challenging first half of the year. As lots of people were learning their roles, and some stuff was falling through the cracks, and we weren't quite nailing everything, whether that was the experience on site or some missing collateral or other bits and pieces. But that team kind of built and grew over the course of the year through a significant investment of time. And so seeing them all come together, and for many of them, it was the first time all the teams had come together. We operate 3 different teams in the US. They're on the road all the time, weeks or months at end, and they may never actually cross. And then bringing that whole group together after a pretty challenging year, seeing the culture, seeing what had been created, seeing them enjoy interacting with the customer and the product, and just being awesome. I think was a real testament to the work of the team. So that was a big highlight. A couple more, if you'll humor me. Quite enjoyed putting a slide on, and whilst the slide itself was fun, it talks more to just returning a little bit of ambition in the scale of build and our willingness to take on something at short notice, just the management of risk, because it's pretty make or break. And people are going to be like, yeah, you could have broken people down the slide. And I don't mean that so much as we were building on the Friday before our biggest, kind of one of the most impactful, most eyes-on events of the year. We could absolutely have built it and been like, oh, this doesn't work, we can't roll it out. And in fact, to a degree, we did, right? We designed it to just operate as a dry slide. We tested it with the pits, and it was fun, but it wasn't quite as good as we, didn't live up to what we wanted. We're like, well, let's put some water down it. So we did. And the people, our team who were testing it, they flew off and were like, that's great, let's put more water down it. And now that we're really whizzing off, and we're like, well, this is great, except the pit's not big enough. So we had to empty that pit overnight and redig a new pit and put a new liner in. But for me, that was a big moment for the team as we get back to the Tough Mudder of old. And then, I want to finish on just the community moments, whether it's seeing some of the volunteers out there running with Jesse and team. And to that, the temptation as you see all these amazing achievements, first woman ever to achieve 100 miles or something, because we put the event on, we think we get it, right? And we'll come back to that. We think we get it. And with Jessie as an example, we've been working with her over the year and her team, and they're just so inspirational. And in the collaboration, we created these 25-mile bibs for the kind of adaptive athletes. And that was a pretty big moment for us. And we're sitting there thinking, we get this. This is a big moment. And then as Jessie and her team come across the line, you think it's big, and then you see them and you're like, we knew it was important, but we didn't know how important. And I find that kind of reminder helpfully humbling. So that was a wonderful moment as well. It doesn't matter how much progress we make, there is always more progress to be made.
Yeah.
And that energizes us to go at it again.
Yeah.
Long answer to a short question.
No, not at all.
What was your highlight, Sean?
Okay, one, and this is going to sound like, I'm making this up, just because you're here. Again, when I say with glee, because I saw you placing, it was a headband, or it was on somebody who just, in fact, from the UK, I believe they were, on one of at the end on one of our runners. And you looked like you were genuinely happy, that you were genuinely proud. And I liked seeing that, because I don't see why you're please don't get me wrong, anybody listening to this, very nice person, just a charming person. I don't see you jumping up with glee or very animated about things. But this time it was like you were like a kid, opening presents at the Christmas tree almost on this one. So I loved seeing that, Giles. I love that. And the other thing involving you when you took the mic. When you took the mic and started talking to the people, I loved seeing that too. And you were just so smooth with it. I don't care what you say about the whole fear factor. Dude, you were just so smooth and charming once again. So those were two things I liked a lot. Yeah. So
too kind. I do. Particularly at Worlds. I've been to several Worlds now, and have obviously been to a lot of events. And having people come across the finish line at any of our events, what a wonderful place to be. And, I'm often jealous of, yourself and Clinton and, you really being able to connect with human being after human being in this moment, as they have really impactful moments. But I think that period of time between 8, 9 o'clock and kind of 1 o'clock at Worlds is another level of connection. Both from the achievement of the event weekend itself, and just because it's such a pinnacle event, so many people plan their calendar to hit, whether it's 50 or 75 or like 100. So it's the milestone of the weekend combined with the milestone of years. I think of giving into this community as well, and it's just so special to be part of that, right? Particularly when you've been on that journey with them for such a while.
Yeah.
And just great. I'd certainly you're lucky to be there weekend after weekend, living that.
I tell them all the time that exact thing, guys. I'm the lucky one here. And I love it when they always come in, and especially the runners that have been out there all night long, and they're like, "Oh, it's so awesome! You're out there. Are you okay?" They're asking me if I'm okay. I'm like, I got the easy part. I'm just standing here. I get the hugs when you guys come in. You're out there on that course, and your pit crew up all night taking care of you. You guys are the amazing ones here. I'm the lucky one. I got to go out on the course, and I thought the course was awesome too. I thought it was perfect in that it was a great terrain, challenging but not overbearing. That it would overwhelm the taste, the flavor, as I would put it. And the weather, cold, perfect, but not too cold where it's shutting people down. That worked out great compared to previous years. What do you think?
Can we take credit for the weather? Do you know what I think I'm going to take like 13 or 14% credit for the weather. Pretty good. And we talk about balance a lot. We're trying to run an event that is like professionally run for elite athletes, but also approachable and a real moment of community, and also a mass participation event. it's fun, but and there are just so many tensions that we need to keep in balance. And if we move too far in any direction with any of them, we start to damage what makes World's Toughest special. And so a big part of that comes into the course. How do you design a course that's going to be challenging and rewarding and fulfilling for someone for whom 25 miles is a massive effort, while at the same time being challenging and rewarding for someone who's going to put 100 miles down, and ensuring again that the people who turn up thinking they're going to do 125 or so can't. It's too difficult for that. And we design, there's a lot more thought goes into the obstacle selection and the penalties and the times when they open and stuff to try and facilitate that balance as best we can. And we don't always get it right. But it was wonderful to see what I would call like your normal human being, people who are not just smashing 100 miles and not even looking tired at the end. It was wonderful to see them having a pretty rewarding and enjoyable experience, of course, but also seeing, the people at that 100-mile end falling off obstacles and like having to do penalties alongside everybody else. So really pleased, Chris, Jen, Brendan, the team there, they did a wonderful job.
Yeah. One of the things you always hear about Tough Mudder is but from other people, they have they're very innovative with their obstacles. We're not just out there hurting you. It's easy to hurt people or exhaust them, run them up a hill with a bucket of rocks or something, But we have fun, innovative obstacles. We have epic, going back to the days of old, those epic obstacles that you would see in the distance and when you're coming out of the woods or someplace out there on the course, the signature obstacles of electrocuting and freezing you in water and that hard monkey climbing thing. We've got all that stuff. I think, and maybe I'm biased, but better than any of the other OCRs out there. Now, do you know the process of how we figure these things out? I'm always curious. Who comes up with these?
I mean, a lot of different people. You know what? I was telling a story. I went round with Jesse and the team partway through the evening, and we got to Block Ness, and we were just through Block Ness, and I turned around, and I assumed everybody knew the story of how Block Ness had been created because, we chatted about this over the years, and it turns out that wasn't the case. And I was explaining that the obstacle was originally designed from an idea that we would run across it lengthways. So you'd have this thing that was a little bit wobbly, and a lot of people would have to run over it. And if you didn't kind of work together, you'd fall in one way or the other. And it was prohibitively difficult. No one could get across as we were testing it. Everybody just fell in. And when they fell into the middle, they then had to get out by going over the blocks, which ended up rotating. And so after this kind of process, we went, oh, this is way more fun to run it the way we currently run it as opposed to the way it was designed. So Block Ness was an accident. An accident to the testing process. But we just sit there and think about the kind of experience we want people to achieve. Is it teamwork? Do we want someone to have something that's difficult that they might come back and try and over? Do we have a fear we want to exploit? And then we just chat through that as a team. How could we bring that to life? We also engage with our community. And in fact, Chris is going to be running or reintroducing a new version of the kind of obstacle innovation lab where we engage the community and think a little bit about what Lego does with Lego ideas. We're going to try and get a similar thing going on the obstacle side, which we're quite excited by for the next couple of years. So we have that kind of big innovation, and then we also just look to tweak up some of our existing obstacles, whether that's changing out the holds or something of that nature. And then the final piece is we try and give the team the ability to just be thoughtful on the ground with how they deploy the obstacle. If there's some terrain that's going to work from a Muddy Digger perspective, we've got a back catalog and we want them to use their creativity. Or the piece I keep using with the team over and over is Devil's Beard. We need to put 30 obstacles in course. You can just get a net and throw it in the field, tick your box and move on. Or you can stop and think, oh, what else could I do with this to make this interesting or fun or challenging? And it's that kind of on the ground creativity and innovation that we want to make sure the team are really having fun with the product as well.
Yeah. We had a lady on the podcast, and I believe she was from over your way in the UK. And her whole thing was, and I should remember her name. I shouldn't have brought it up without remembering her name. But her whole thing, she's deaf, so was making fitness accessible to everyone, and we have our, like you say, our adaptive athletes that's been coming to these events for a while, and I think we do a great job of so far of what we've done. How much of that is in us creating our courses, us creating these obstacles? Are you guys thinking about the accessibility of them?
We are, and I touched on that earlier. We think we are, right, and we think we're doing a good job at it, but that's based on our own perception and our own biases, and that's why it's so important that we engage with the right people from the community, because if you aren't an adaptive athlete, it's very difficult to truly understand the other perspective, right? You think you do, but you don't necessarily. And so it's really important that we take the time to listen and understand and involve if we're really going to make progress there. And I'm really excited by some of the conversations that are going on at the moment. I actually, the last kind of big event we had in the UK, London South, we had about 15,000 people there, and it was great to kind of have Tough Mudder, back up at scale. And I went around the course with a gentleman in a wheelchair called Ben, and that was, again, just a really kind of impactful experience. And he was in his own wheelchair, and the team around him had kind of tried to retrofit it to make it work for the course, and it wasn't really suitable, and it made it really challenging. And I left there thinking, but we've solved this before. We now have the knowledge that exists. And so I actually have a call on Monday with a gentleman called Gordon in the UK who makes bespoke wheelchairs. And we're going to purchase a couple of wheelchairs on the TM side so that, the kit that has been manufactured specifically for what we're trying to do exists, right? So again, we move a barrier to entry there, and hopefully we can get more people like Ben involved. But I think I touched on this earlier, right? We only ever make progress. We can never really do enough. And so every step we take, the question is like, well, what next?
Yeah, from what I hear, we get good marks in that department. So well done again for you guys on that. And then it's such there's a balance there, a dance there, because I've had adaptive athletes say, well, I don't want it to be, simple or totally modified for me. The whole idea is we're out here adapting, so there is, that dance. And I think you guys have done well with that. The other thing is this year, what I loved, and this is to do with the whole year, not just World Toughest Mudder, is our attention to being all inclusive. We were flying the LGBTQ plus flag pretty much all year long. And I don't know if you heard, I had one event where I did have a gentleman come up to me and he's like, I'm insulted by that flag. And I didn't know what he was talking about. At first, I thought he was talking about the American flag, and I'm like, oh, uh, I'm like, which flag is that? And he's saying the rainbow flag and all that. I'm like, oh, he goes, I want you to take it down. This is at the start, okay, where I got, I'm about to send people out. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, man, that's not going to happen. And he goes, well, I don't see why it has to be there. I'm insulted by it. And he's going on and on. And I'm like, hey, we're all inclusive, sir. I go, that's not going to come down. That is our policy. We welcome everyone. If you had your own personal flag, I'd wave it in my hand for you if you really need it. I go, don't let this ruin. I see you over there with your team. I'm like, man, go out there and have a good time. Put everything aside right now. Go out there on the course. Enjoy yourself. Feel that camaraderie out there, and then when you get back to the finish line, if you want to protest things, go right ahead. If you want, go back to your life the way you want to do it. But right now, enjoy this. This is what you came here for. So he did go back. And of course, because I gave him the option. I'm like, if you want to go out right now, I'll give you a quick safety briefing and you can take your team and go. But he stayed, he stayed in the circle. So hopefully he got the message, or at least the vibe that we push with Tough Mudder. So, how is it in the UK? Is it different from what we have going on in the States in regards to that?
Look, I think the community is similar. The desire to bring people together, to have real community with them, to bridge gaps, I think is very similar. we when Tough Mudder was first launched in the UK, very first event, played the national anthem, a bit like happens in the US at the start shoots, for the first couple of waves. And you had these like shoots full of 600 people looking around, being like, "This is really weird. What's going on? Make it stop." And so I think some of the seriousness, the solemnness that exists in the US, which I think can be moving and poignant, really important, doesn't resonate in the same way in the UK. I would say there's a little bit more irreverence there. But we also, I think, use that kind of gentle humor, the self-depreciating humor, as a tool to bring people together in the same way that you are describing. And that's, I think, equally important, regardless of where that Tough Mudder community is. I've done Tough Mudder events in Australia and Germany and Bali, and now working in Korea and China. And the same principle. It's not actually about the obstacles. What we are ultimately doing is creating an environment in which people can leave the day-to-day behind and come have real human interactions together. In fact, another thought again, if you will, just humor me running down a rabbit hole. We talk quite a lot in Tough Mudder about the fact that it's important, teamwork is important. You want to help people, and we celebrate that. And actually at Worlds, right, you have several groups who pay a lot of money to enter Worlds, to give up their entire weekend. Sometimes they don't even finish with a headband, whether that's on Mudderhorn or Everest or out of the walls, just 24 hours in pretty terrible temperatures, not moving, just to help other people. And so helping is a huge part of this. And we all feel great helping other people. That you help the old lady across the street, that's the cliche, isn't it? And you feel good about it.
Yeah.
The question for me is, how does the old lady feel? And the most powerful thing, if you're with a team, I'd say, is not only helping other people, but are you willing to allow yourself to be helped? And I think that's the next level of kind of human connection that we have the ability to foster in Tough Mudder, because making yourself vulnerable to somebody else, relying on somebody else. If you get to the walls, it's really easy to be like, "I'll help you up." And then when someone offers you help, "No, I've got this, check me out," right?
Yeah.
Bounce straight over the wall. I'm a hero, right? And that's pretty good, right? That's still much better than not helping other people. But I think when you're really prepared in that environment to accept help from others, I think you're then having another moment of connection that we don't talk about enough, but that's really important.
Yeah. If that's funny, I'm smiling so much because I always say, again, at the start line, that what they're doing out there, having fun, like they are, the trans, is the transition of it is what they take home too. I feel like they're out there doing their honing those survival skills and exercising those demons that are also going on in their life. They get to come here and exercise those things. But to what you just said, one of my favorite lyrics, if not my favorite lyrics in a song, is in the song Nature Boy, where they say, the greatest thing you ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. And I'm like, oh man, in the Mudder version, it's like the greatest thing you ever learn is just to help and be helped in return. So to speak to what
Yeah.
you were just saying, so just to throw that out there. And the other thing when you were talking about, so you guys don't play your national anthem or your anthem every wave as we do here in the States, is what I'm getting, correct?
That is correct. In fact, I'm not sure we play it anywhere outside of the US.
And what do you think when you see that? I've had before. I think we had one year where they came to me and they're like, we're not going to do that anymore. And the people didn't really like that at all. You know, they they complained about it. So we brought it back. You're very patriotic, I guess, in our country, our young
Well,
country.
it I think it's a continuation of the point you made earlier about it's important that we remain inclusive and respectful. And a big part of that is respecting cultural differences. You know, we could easily legislate that you play the national anthem at the start of every Tough Mudder event globally or at no Tough Mudder event globally. But I think either of those wouldn't be appropriate because we need to adjust slightly for the appropriateness of the culture and the people that we're we're putting this on for. I spent a lot of time. I also am responsible for about 240 Spartan events, which is just a very, very different experience. There's a lot more national anthems getting played there and podiums and, very different type of theatre. But I think one of the benefits we have at Tough Mudder, because it is not sport per se, there isn't the desire for consistency. It just doesn't matter if we have a slightly different set of obstacles or a slightly different start speech, because what we're trying to create is the emotions and the experience. We're trying to facilitate an environment where that magic can happen. We just put the people in. And so all for it, right? Let's listen and work and adjust as needed.
Yeah, and props to you guys, your MCs over there also. The MCs you were mentioning that were out there for doing World Toughest Mudder for the whole 24 hours. Myself, Clinton Jackson, and Jason Helmstetter. We were at the start and finish. Our other MC was actually out there, James. He was out there on the course running it, talking the talk, running the walk. And Greg James. And I do hear, like I said, I do hear great things about and I've seen great things with our MCs over in the UK. Now, this is me personally asking, what do you want from us MCs at these events?
I mean, that's a good question. I think what I want is basically what you're doing. You prepare people you at the start, right? You get that crowd into the right headspace. I think you nailed it with your song, right? People could come and they could be all about themselves, but if you can switch them to be in a place where they're prepared to help and receive help, without unlocking that, I think their interaction and experience on the course is different. So, I think preparing the mindset, opening them up for the possibilities, and even with your best efforts, right? Not everybody will hear it, and some people will just whiz around. It'll be a really kind of fun, cool, run, and they have the beer and off they go. But I think you open a whole bunch more people up to the possibility than would happen otherwise, and so that's a really big part of it. And then on the receiving end of it, I think being there to call out and celebrate the poignantness of those moments as they cross the finish line, because they are worthy of praise, is hugely, hugely valuable.
Yeah.
And then of very little value to anybody other than myself, but I thoroughly enjoy it, chuckling away at the banter and the jokes and the odd chuckle as well, right? That amuses me, and that's worth it,
Yeah.
if nothing else.
Let me mention also Coach Kyle. He was out there, another one of our wonderful MCs. He was out there in the middle of the course, DJing, had the music, almost like you get to run through a party halfway through the World Toughest Mudder course when you're out there on there, so you get that little burst of energy again to get you back into the finish line. Coach has been with us for a while
And
too.
Sean, you touched on earlier if you're running through the daytime in a normal kind of open Tough Mudder event, and you may be several miles in, and you look and you've got a big obstacle in the future, there's that sense of anticipation. It's in the back of your mind for the 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever it is, as you get closer to that. And a big part of Coach's Corner out at Worlds is similar. You run the first part of the course, it's cold, it's dark, you're then into the woods, and you've got some areas are lit, it's really tranquil, it's quiet, you're in a Zen space. That's where you're like suffering and limping and it's horrible. And then all of a sudden there's this noise coming through, and you've got a period of time where you're running and it's just getting louder and builds up. And that sense of, I think, anticipation adds a huge amount to the event as well, which is wonderful, and just nice to have him back on courses, isn't it?
Yeah, it was nice, and you're right. It's almost it's almost as much a psychological boost as it is physical. Because when I was out there walking it again, I was walking it backwards just to say hey to all the runners, and just I didn't get to do our quick lap and the day before. But it was like you said, you could hear Coach somewhere in the distance there, which, because I was ready to I'll just hop on this buggy and head back into but I'm like, oh, well, he's right there. I'll just keep going, and sort of got me through, gave me that energy. We're branching out all over the world once again. I'm seeing Tough Mudders popping up in the Asian countries and Australia. Where else? Help me out here. Where else have we been now?
Yeah, so we're reopening Germany and Australia this year, both markets that we've been in, that either for COVID or other reasons shut, so they're coming back. New into China and South Korea this year, or kind of a relaunch in China, brand new into South Korea. We've got Mexico coming online as well. We had Malaysia, and actually we're doing something really exciting in the Philippines, where we might build a permanent Tough Mudder installation.
Wow.
We're working with a partner out there. In fact, Chris is flying out in January. We've always toyed with this idea. What would it take to be able to run smaller groups of people more intimately through? Imagine in the Philippines, you've got a big wedding party.
Mm-hmm.
And just the nature of the family groups there, it's maybe 300 people, 400 people. And they want to have over this weekend wedding experience, like something that really brings them together. And could you host that whole thing in an environment where you could also give them a personalized Tough Mudder experience without having to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars of like incremental cost for a small group of people? Real kind of corporate, as well as just running normal events. So pretty excited to see what we could do with that. We've still got events operating out in the Middle East, which is great. And we've got a number of other countries. The next one that I'm in negotiations with, I'm pretty keen to crack, is Japan. I think it is going to be outrageously well received by the market there. And here's something that you might enjoy, because you're obviously so close to the people and that kind of emotional connection with the product. And that actually looks slightly different as you go across the world. As we talk about the US, there's a culture that's a little bit of me rather than we, right? We talk a lot about individuals, and it's much less about like families and extended families, which is very different to Asian culture, where you're still living with 2 or 3 generations of your family for the entirety of your life, and it's very much about we, and you're discouraged from being kind of me or I. But what they don't necessarily get is the freedom of expression to just laugh and enjoy themselves. And as you say, right, I'm gesticulating, which may not be helpful at all if you're listening to this podcast and not watching. But just really interesting to see that creating the same environment allows people to take something that's still really, really valuable in a community sense out of it, but that something is different.
Yeah. A lot of good things said there. I love the idea of the almost like an amusement park, a Tough Mudder amusement park, stationary, like you said, so people can come there, a Tough Mudder abusement park, if you will, and they can come there. And I believe, like, from what I've seen, from what's been going on, how the whole sport has been growing, where you see more families out there. I'm seeing more groups, whether it be church groups, the ladies that get together for something, and like I said, families, all these groups that come there for this bonding experience. So I think that would be great. It'd be cool if we had a place here that we could do that too. Maybe down the line. Um, how do you feel about the year? Now let's do a State of the Union type thing, as our presidents do here, wrapping up the year. How did you feel about this year?
It was tough, really, really tough. Probably the hardest year we have had yet. We obviously took Tough Mudder through, bankruptcy in 2019 into 2020, and I'm going to mention deferred revenue, which is not something anybody ever wants to hear on a podcast. Now, what's that? I'm not Googling that. But basically, right, you sell a whole bunch of tickets, and people assume, well, I paid my ticket, that money exists, they're going to use that money for putting on the event. So what had happened in 2019 is people paid their money for the event, and all of that went away. And so we started Tough Mudder post bankruptcy, new company. You got to put all the events on, but all of the tickets sold previously were gone. So you had none of the money available to put those events on. So that was going to be pretty tough. And we sold a couple more tickets. We, kept the team going. And then COVID, boom, and 2020 gets wiped out. And then it's 2021. And so now you have this significant body of people that need to be serviced. We've got to buy their stuff, incur all the cost to give them a good event experience, but all of the money that they generated in previous ticket sales, either because of COVID or the pre-2019, is gone. And so that's an extraordinarily challenging environment to put on events. And we were basically at the crunch point, like the worst of that by mid-22, right?
Mm-hmm.
With all of the damage of COVID kind of had dragged out. It was right there, and we were dealing with maximum damage whilst also maximum, now trying to get back to full-size events. So whether it was rebuilding the team or dealing with the financial challenges or other stuff, it has been a tough year. And so in a lot of ways, just seeing the year through, there's a sense of relief on a personal perspective, more of wow, that was tough. A huge sense of gratitude to the community for, bearing with us. We certainly had some teething problems and some challenges through, right? It's not gone unnoticed that it's been a difficult year. And I can't thank the team enough for the effort that it took to deliver a year like this, without any of the things they come to expect. I'm like, hey, put your event on, but you can't have any money, you can't have any more colleagues, and you can't just make it happen. So they've done such a wonderful job with that. And then I think my second feeling, if you look at the year, numbers increased. So the average event size as we've got into the back end of the year is, at least 50% up, and in some cases twice what it was at the start of the year. So we're slowly moving back to normal, which is great.
Good.
And we will continue that trend into next year. The team are now experienced. We've exercised a number of the demons. We're at the back of a number of the other challenges. And so it's almost a sense of optimism as we look to next year.
Yeah.
We can now deliver for customers without our hands tied behind our backs.
Yeah, I was going to say, in fact, next year, what would you like to see continued and even better? What are you seeing?
I think one thing, loved Infinities this year, and obviously, you talked about iteration earlier. The Infinity reflects something the community were already doing, and we've just tried to add a little bit of structure to that, and really pleased with what we saw this year. And I think there's a lot more we can do with that next year to make it feel more like a toughest or world's toughest type event, and just tighten that architecture up. So hoping to see a lot of kind of progress in there. That's also ended up being a gateway for Spartan and other customers who are wanting to enter Tough Mudder, to experience Tough Mudder, but feel like they can't possibly exist in an OCR world without competition. And this gives them a wonderful space for that. And we've seen two things. We've seen the Spartan team, customers going, oh, this is pretty cool. Really like this community, really like this feel. This is a really good event. And then on the Tough Mudder side, there's been, actually, these Spartan folks aren't so bad. we could welcome them into our community. They're actually quite wonderful. And that doesn't mean there isn't going to continue to be some rivalry. And one of the reasons, I'm sitting here drinking Coke is on the off chance Joe watches, going to drive him absolutely bonkers. And that makes me happy inside. So we will continue to poke fun of each other, and that's great. But I also, we talk about community and bringing people together, and we love all of our children equally. And so we want to see our Spartan and TM children playing together. I think scale at events, the ambition of obstacles, challenge. I've jokingly said I want cage crawl to be terrifying, but I'm not actually joking. As the team were really difficult, they just swamped learning, still getting up to it. They might dig cage crawl and fill it with water and be done. But if you go through and you can basically breathe comfortably, you're missing the point. I want people to be breathing through the fence, full on freaking out, not moving fast until the wave comes through. Because the sense of achievement you get from the event, the sense of really doing something difficult with other people, the reason you are able to help or you need to receive help, I think is directly tied to the nature of the challenges that we present. And so I'm keen to put a little bit more challenge into some places without it becoming too gratuitous. Although every now and then I'm tempted to just put a flag up on a hill with a sign being here's the gratuitous 2-mile run up a hill for anyone who misses extra miles, off you go. So maybe we'll see some of that next year. And then I want the team to just have more fun. And a big element of that, any customer I speak to is Giles, love Tough Mudder, dislike getting 384 emails from you a week, most of which are a little bit dull. And I'm well, that's fair. That's fair. And whether it's the production team or the marketing team or the email team, I like to get to a point where we're not under so much pressure that you're just having to churn out. And we've got to get to a place where they can enjoy the quality of the content they put out, the joking nature of a video they make or a humorous post they put out, and just have a little bit more fun expressing themselves and enjoying that expression with the community. So hopefully we can see more of that next year.
Part of what I got from all that was our sweet Giles is looking to waterboard us out there on the course. We'll tell all our secrets.
I tell you what, the mops in cage crawl at Toughest were pretty unpleasant. I loved it. More mops.
Yes.
For people who don't know, we hung mop heads under the underside of the cage, so you had that kind of run over your face, which was just
brilliant.
Just wonderful,
actually,
wonderful,
that was great. When I had talked to Joe, because I had asked Joe what he felt the difference between Tough Mudder and Spartan was, and in general, he was saying what he was looking for in Spartan was to be a sport, just a straight up sport, and he said kind of like what we were saying, where Tough Mudder is all inclusive, people out there helping each other. Similar thoughts from you? What's the difference for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Sport versus non-sport, competition versus non-competition gives us an awful lot more opportunity to play about with a Tough Mudder product. But I think the temptation there is to assume when we say inclusive, we mean easier. And I don't think that's the case at all. And you touched on it earlier, right? When you're working with adaptive athletes, we don't need to make things easier. That's not what people are necessarily looking for. And so we want Tough Mudder to be available to anybody, but not everybody is going to choose to embrace the challenge. And we're okay with that. And we're not gonna soften it so that everybody could do it. Because the sense of pride in that achievement, the sense of accomplishment, is tied to us maintaining the integrity of the challenge there. I also think from a brand voice perspective, we're able to talk a lot more to team in a way you can't in an individual sport. And I think that's really important in modern culture. And we're able to do it in an irreverent tone. And I talked about, a big part of the job is just making sure I amuse myself. And the irreverent tone's a big part of that too. And so I enjoy that. And I don't think you can do that as effectively on the Spartan side.
One of the things I
What
always
you've obviously you've spoken to people from both sides. What's your sense of the two?
okay. One, I was surprised when we did come together. You know, when Joe did by Tough Mudder, that there wasn't that big of a crossover because everyone that I knew that did Tough Mudders, 90% of them did Spartans also, you know, and the whole OCR world, that whole ultra experience, a lot of them did, you know, even if they weren't a top athlete. So that surprised me. And I love that one event that we had in Florida, I think it was at the end of the year last year, where they did use the same venue and had the events going on at the same time. I thought that was really cool because it kind of introduced each other to people that didn't know about the other. And we had a few people, I think a handful, that actually did all the events, all the Tough Mudder events, and all of the Spartan events in that weekend, which I thought, man, we should just have some sort of a headband or award for that, you know, that they did that, you know. So I think it's great. I love seeing more and more of again, the Spartan world coming over to the Tough Mudder world and vice versa. I've said it ever since I've been working with Tough Mudder. You know, whenever I was at the start and somebody would be wearing a Spartan shirt and people were like, oh, boo, like it was some sport, you know, like they were the team we were playing against. I'm like, that's not our mentality here. We support anybody out there being active. I don't care if you're skiing, jumping out of a plane, as I said mistakenly at World Toughest Mudder, jumping out of a car, whatever your sport is, you know, we support that. We just want you to be active out there, have a community feel, and get off the couch, live, be adventurous, you know. So I love it. And I think it's becoming more and more, as through my experience. So well done on that part. Um, Before I get you out of here, one of the things I always like to do with my guests too is I always like to go back, you know, get a little personal, go back to little Giles. This is little Giles. Where was little Giles born? What was life like for little Giles that got him to where he is now?
Little Giles was born in Cape Town, South Africa. So I spent a lot of time outside on the beach, in the mountains, a lot of time in the surf and the water, swimming about, which was wonderful. And then stumbled my way into the UK for a gap year. So I was supposed to be going home. You know, my mum bought me a return ticket. She sent me off. You know, life's good. So that awkward call, you know, when you're like, "Oh, I'm not coming back. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to stay in the UK." Bless her. And then, you know, got involved in sport for a while, and the falling into Tough Mudder. People, I don't really care all that much about that kind of period between Little Giles and Tough Mudder. It's an interesting story. I'd worked with a gentleman called Kieran at the Olympics, and he had got the contract to run the campsite for Tough Mudder, and he had used another one of his contacts, an Australian fella, to be his second in command, which is a very fancy title for like his slave that just does all the hard work on the campsite. And that gentleman got deported just before the Scotland Tough Mudder event in 2014. And I think I was the only person Kieran knew in Scotland. So he calls me up a couple of days beforehand. I'd not even heard of Tough Mudder by this point. He's like, "Giles, I really need you to come like help me out in the camping gig. It'll be fun." So I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I'm doing nothing this weekend. So I turn up at Tough Mudder Scotland, a wonderful event. I was blown away by the whole kind of event experience. But they hadn't ordered enough toilets, Sean. And so we had this campsite, 800 people. There were not enough portaloos. Clearly, I'm the second in command, i.e., you know, the serving wench here. And so I spent most of my first Tough Mudder experience with a stick. And if you go into a portaloo that's like overflowing and you pop your stick in and you give it like a little bit of a twirl, it goes from a little mountain to flat, and then you can get a bit more in. And so that was my first kind of overnight Tough Mudder experience. And at the end of that event, I just walked into the end of event debrief, and I didn't know that, you know, I was so junior in the old like hierarchy at the time. I shouldn't have been there. And I just gave them a pretty long list of feedback for how they needed to sort some stuff out. And so like, "Oh, well, do you want to come work for us then?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And there we have it. I was thereafter an employee of Tough Mudder. And I wish I could say now that I'm in charge that we never got the toilet metrics wrong again, but that is absolutely not the case. Still, far more often than I would like, we just don't order enough Portaloos, or the truck doesn't come to clean them out overnight, and I always have flashbacks. And in the TM UK truck, there's a little stick with a little hand on the top for just such an occasion, and we have a good joke about it.
That's awesome. Hey, wait a minute. You were born in South Africa. Now, excuse my ignorance, but your current accent, which you don't think you have one, but you do, is it UK? Is it British? Or is it South African? Or a little
it's just
combination?
a bit messy. When I was in,
go ahead.
A little combination. So my parents were both British. So when I was in South Africa, people used to make fun of me for sounding foreign, right? For sounding British. Now I'm in the UK, people still think I'm weird, and they're like, "Oh, you sound foreign." I'm like, "Well, make your minds up."
That's awesome.
It is what it is.
It sounds lovely.
Certainly, I sound weird to my American colleagues. That is for sure.
Not at all. That accent always sounds intelligent. Even the dumbest person over in Europe with that British accent is going to sound intelligent. So I don't think that at all. And let me say this again. Bravo to you. I love your connection from my point of view with the community here. And how would you describe your relationship with the community here in the States? Because let me say this also, very scary to me, when you put yourself out there, because there's always going to be people that complain. And if they have access to the CEO, the guy on top, the person on top, all they're gonna do is complain, and you have to sit through that and try and be as diplomatic as possible. And I think that if there is a God, the smartest thing God ever did was not make themselves accessible to us so that we can complain to him all the time. Says, "Oh, do it in a prayer. I'll get it." Yeah. But you're.
I would describe our relationship as like a family, familial, which I think touches on what you were describing. Sometimes it's so energizing and rewarding connecting with the community. They give so much to each other and to us at TMHQ. And other times it's brutal. We give our honest best, our absolute best, and then we just get savaged for it out the other side. And that can be really tough to take. And I'm pretty open to feedback, and I actively engage and seek it out. But sometimes that feedback comes back in a manner that's pretty difficult to take, or at a point when you're just pretty raw. But it's worth it. On the whole, the positives far outweigh the negatives. And it's part of the job, right? Whether it's myself or someone will come after me. One of the most valuable things that we have at Tough Mudder is the community. They are such an integral part of this event, and so we owe it to them to support and nurture and encourage and promote and champion and them as a group. And at times that comes with the occasional flogging. And then you gotta take that and move on.
Another obstacle we can introduce: the flogging. Again, well done. I again, from my point of view, and I watch you and hear what people say about you, you're doing a wonderful job on that end too. So I hope you feel that. Will there be a World Toughest Mudder outside of the United States?
Oh, now there is a big question. I would love there to be. I would love to bring World's Toughest Mudder to Europe. I think the community in the UK and actually on the continent as well is so good, and it would be wonderful to give a much larger portion of that group a moment, as well as to really immerse the core US community in that kind of European experience.
Yeah.
One of the challenges is whether the best place to do it outside of the US would be the UK. And I think it would only really be viable if we did it mid-year, which is not great from a calendar perspective or just how people think about the season. So we need to get our heads around that. And I'm fine for cold weather. So if we could run Worlds in November in the UK and it was just going to be freezing cold, be all over that.
Yeah.
But it's unlikely to be freezing cold. It's likely to just be rainy and miserable and horrible. And that's probably not the end of the world from an athlete perspective. They're in wetsuits already, hopefully, or they decided they didn't need a wetsuit and they're then back in their tent not functioning. But if you think about the pit and the chat and the social environment and how that plays out, and then imagine that it's pouring with rain for the entirety of the experience and you never actually want to leave your tent and it all turns up horrible and muddy. I can't bring myself to do it, but I am looking for options.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, don't let that hold you back too much, because I think part of us human beings, we might be miserable then and, maybe complaining up to it. But after it's done, it's epic then. And we get to headline every conversation at dinner, just like when we had the sandstorm come in, everybody that was there for that, they're a headliner at their dinner event, to have that. So it all plays a part in the experience for me, even if it is the weather is challenging too. So
that's true. I tell you what, if we do have it in the UK, we will definitely be bringing you over, Sean.
Yay!
So it's wonderful to have you at an event in the UK of that scale.
Yeah, all the runners and the people that I've been introduced to in the UK, whether it be through the podcast or at our events, again, awesome people, man, just awesome. They're doing a great job over there too. So, with that being said, sir, I am going to not going to let you get out of here before I ask you my two final questions that I ask of all my guests. One is that lovely quote that was passed down to me by one of our Legionnaires. You've heard me tell the story before. It was a gentleman named Craig. I got to visit him in the hospital just before he passed away of cancer. And he told me when he was diagnosed, he started living by this quote that became a motto for him, became a motto for me. I brought it back to Mother Nation. Over the years, they made it so popular, it actually became a song by Darius Rucker. And as you know, last year at our World Toughest Mudder event, Darius Rucker was actually performing literally across the street at the amphitheater and performed that song where we all could hear it at night during World Toughest Mudder, and by no doing of ours, just a cosmic coincidence. The question is, the quote and the question is, when was the last time you did something for the first time? When was it? What was it?
Do you know what? This is going to sound weird, but on Wednesday, Joe sent round a note to the whole team, happy Thanksgiving, and then at the end, because he thinks I'm a bit of a slacker, he wrote Giles no cake. So I dropped a note into our ambassador group, and wished them all a happy Thanksgiving, and I made this point. I was like, Joe says we shouldn't have cake, but that sounds horrible, right? That doesn't sound right at all. So I wish you all lots and lots of cake. To which I get this feedback from the community, not cake, Giles, pumpkin pie. And I'm like, what is this weird thing? Is it a cake? Is it not a cake? So I went out and I had myself some pumpkin pie over the weekend. When was that? Friday or Saturday? It took a little bit of chasing down. What a delight. I still prefer cake. There you have it, pumpkin pie.
You can have them both. You can have your pumpkin pie and cake too. In fact, get that Cool Whip with that pumpkin pie, and try the sweet potato pie also. Just as lovely, just as tasteful. My recommendation: sweet potato pie, Cool Whip. My final question to you, sir. Okay, you're out there doing your Giles thing. Maybe you're at an event, out there on the course surveying things, and you come across a lamp, you pick it up. You do what everybody does when they pick up a lamp. You wipe it off. Out pops me, the genie, in the lamp. I've been in there for millions and trillions of centuries. So happy that you finally freed me. Giles, I'm not going to give you 3 wishes. I'm going to give you the ultimate gift. In this moment, Giles, I am going to give you the undivided attention of the world. In this moment, you have the world's ears. They're going to stop what they're doing and they're just listening to you. What do you say to the world in this moment?
Oh man, I'm torn. I'm torn because, I feel like the right thing to say is we're tougher together. But I feel like I should really tell them there's the Cyber Monday sale on and they need to buy a Tough Mudder ticket. I like, what do you do, right? What do you do?
Both.
No, I mean, tougher. Yeah, we're tougher together. But get out and do Tough Mudder World. We will all be better for it.
I totally agree. Well said. Giles, it worked. We did it. We finally got this conversation recorded.
We certainly did. Well, it was all the way back at Philly when we started trying to connect on this. You out and about this weekend?
Yes, I'm heading to Florida in a few days for our Central Coast event, our final one of the year. I believe there's one going on the West Coast also at the same time. But it'll be nice. It'll be it's like prom for us, like a prom event kind of thing at the end of the year, and go out there for the last time and hug some of our hardcore mutters that come to these events. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, have a wonderful time out there. Say hi to the community for me. I will keep in touch with them via the Tinterweb. Wonderful thing. And then a moment of pause before I'll see you out and about and at it in the new year.
Yes. Happy New Year to you, sir. We'll see you soon, hopefully. And thank you for this.
Marvelous. My pleasure. Cheers, Sean. Thank you.
You can find Tough Mudder on Facebook and Twitter. That will be @Tough or on Instagram, also @Tough Mudder. Please remember you can find this podcast, No Excuses, on wherever you listen to podcasts. Guys, subscribe. Let me know what you like, what you're not liking, and I will be including you as much as possible and even more in the future.
Inspirational.
Be inspired. Inspire.
No excuses.
Motivational.
Be motivated.
Motivate. No excuses.
No whining.
No quitting. Overcome.
No excuses.
Community. Teamwork.
Tough Mudder.
Tougher
together.
No excuses.